Cool, cocky and with a twinkle in his eye, Gene Kelly was the man who danced from the Brooklyn docks to the top of the Empire State Building. The man who was immortalised in Singing in the Rain. In his chinos, white T-shirt and loafers, he epitomised the new post-war American male. Relaxed, self-assured and with a can-do attitude, he single-handedly created an all-American dance style. Thanks to Gene Kelly, the film musical would never be the same again.
I'm singing in the rain, just singing in the rain. What a glorious feeling, I'm happy again. I'm laughing at clouds.
When he danced from the tips of his fingers down to the tips of his toes. He was living every part of that joy and that strength that he had.
That is one of the great sequences in the whole of cinema, as great as anything by Eisenstein, and a damn lot more entertaining, if you ask me.
Gene Kelly was one of MGM's greatest stars, a unique talent, a one-off.
Gene Kelly was Butch personified.
What do you call him, like a He-Man? What's that word you use? Macho? Is that the word?
He was a real guy. He was a real man's man. And they used to call him, the dancing truck driver,
New York, New York, a wonderful town. The Bronx is up and the Battery's down. The people ride in a hole in the ground. New York, New York, it's a wonderful town.
Isn't it true that dancing is the sexiest art form of the lot?
Oh, I'm sure it is. I hadn't thought about it that way.
I'll bet.
It's the sweatiest. That means anything.
In 1940, at the age of 28, Gene Kelly got his first big break on Broadway in the Rodgers and Hart musical, Pal Joey, based on a series of stories by the writer John O'Hara.
I watched his audition for Pal Joey. That was the same day I did mine. Boy, he took charge of that theater.
From the back of the theater, a booming voice, the voice of John O'Hara, said, "Rodgers, you've got your man. That's Pal Joey," he yelled. And of course, the prestige of John O'Hara was such that Gene got the part.
If they ask me, I could write a book.
The story of seducing this older woman who, in actuality, seduced him was a naughty story, and for the times, which is 40-41, the critics were shocked. They didn't think a story like that could ever be successful.
Pal Joey was sensational. He was wonderfully cast. He brought charm to the part. I don't know if you've read the stories, but he's not quite as charming as Gene was.
He was a mean, heel kind of guy, which is an unusual hero for
a musical comedy.
Never been anything quite like it.
It was sort of stripped naked reality, but tremendous charm at the same time.
Gene was part of that. And
very much a part of it.
He was a smash of New York.
He brought a shine to Joey, a glamour, a seductiveness to Joey. I've never seen anyone play that rather despicable cad as attractively as Gene did.
Shortly before his success in Pal Joey, Kelly had met a 16-year-old dancer called Betsy Blair.
I got this card to come to Billy Rose's Diamond Horseshoe to a call for dancers. And I was all dressed up in high heels and there was somebody moving chairs and tables around in this nightclub, and I thought it was a busboy. And I said, I have an appointment, I have a call to come to see Mr. Rose. And he said, are you a dancer? And I said, yes. And he said, well, it's tomorrow. And I said, no, it's today. And he said, no, you'll find it's tomorrow. And so I fished the card out, and it was the next day. And so I said, thank you very much, very grand to this busboy, and started out, and he said, are you a good dancer? And I turned around and said, very. And anyway, the next day when I got to the audition, it was Gene who was moving the chairs and tables around. And he was the choreographer. So I think I'm blushing now. I blushed then, I thought I would die. Anyway, I got the job, And I didn't realize it, but I think I fell in love immediately. And, I mean, that was it. I was gone.
Word travelled fast about this new Broadway star, and Kelly was soon offered a movie contract by producer David Selznick. In 1941, he married Betsy, and they headed west for a new life in Hollywood. Ironically, although Kelly was under contract to Selznick, he was loaned out to MGM to make his first film in 1942.
The first film that Gene Kelly did was Me and My Gal with Judy Garland. And they became friends right away. And remember, they danced. Did you see that film? They danced together and they sang the song, "The bells are ringing for me and my gal." Yeah.
Here comes that love land again. For me and my gal.
Judy was fantastic. I mean, she was so helpful. She had always told him, you don't have to do much. In the movies, it's different. I mean, she really helped him.
It's as if Gene Kelly had done 6 or 8, 10 pictures prior to that film. He was so much at home in front of the camera. And little things that he did, little movements, the way he read lines, are the way a seasoned actor for motion picture would have done.
Say, what hit us?
Oh, it hit me a long time ago.
The success of For Me and My Gal made Kelly a household name, and when MGM offered him a 7-year contract, it was too good to resist.
An incredible learning curve took place, and he was not afraid of technical things. He learned cameras, lenses. He knew how to handle lighting, and he just knew an awful lot, and he was clear-eyed enough to know that those around him often didn't know a lot.
He had a work ethic that was serious. He wanted to be the best. And crews loved to work with him because he came on and he knew his lines. And if someone hadn't done their homework, they would hear about it, because he had always done his.
We moved into a house in Laurel Canyon on Lookout Mountain Drive, and it was tiny, it was perfect. It had an Inglenook fireplace, and it just had 2 bedrooms and a bathroom upstairs, and we bought a ping pong table. That was the first thing we bought. It took up the whole living room. You could just get around it to get to the fireplace where you could sit. It was like a tiny chalet, and it was sensational.
In 1942, Gene and Betsy had a child together, Kerry.
Or I'll be there, putting down my top hat, mussing up my white tie, dancing in my tail.
The Top Hat and Tails musicals of Fred Astaire were not for Kelly. His more physical dance style was an expression of something quite different.
I wanted to dance, well, like Marlon Brando wanted to act, roll up my sleeves and say, hey, did you know? And if there is a difference, I would categorize it as saying, let's see how I could put it succinctly, that Fred is sort of, he represents the aristocracy when he dances, and I represent the proletariat, and that's it. Up the rebels!
The truth is, he couldn't have been Fred Astaire because his goal was dancing for everybody. The appreciation of that, the joy of movement and emotion in it, and life, and relating it to real life, to working situations or to working people.
Kelly would often demonstrate that each dance step had its physical counterpart in sport. He'd always been a great athlete, and his childhood dream was to be shortstop for the Pittsburgh Pirates. Christened Eugene Cohen Kelly, he was born in Pittsburgh in 1912. One of 5 children, his father worked as a travelling phonograph salesman to support the family.
I think he got all his charm from his father and his ambition from his mother. And I think if we all lived in a different society, she would have killed for her family. I mean, she was really a powerhouse.
She thought it was a very bad thing that they were Irish, because in Pittsburgh at the time, the Dutch or the Germans were considered higher class. So she used to say, you know, if someone asks you what your last name is, say your name is Eugene Mueller.
There certainly were experiences that forged his political and social conscience. In his first year at university, he couldn't join certain groups because of having had a Catholic upbringing. And he started a rival group to combat this sort of exclusivity.
He was just a good fellow who was for the underdog, who was for the unions, who was for the working man.
He and I got in a huge argument much later about his support for the IRA. His viewpoint was, I think, sort of traditional Irish-American Catholic view of the IRA as these brave men in the hills, you know, from the 1920s fighting the might of the British Army. And I was coming in saying, oh, they're terrorists. And he just didn't want to hear it. No, not one word of it.
Kelly's father lost his job during the Depression, but his mother set up and ran 2 successful dancing schools, with Gene and his brother Fred teaching classes.
Guys in those days thought that only girls would do ballet and all the other different dances. See, that's not for men. And so, Jane, what do you mean? I'm not a sissy. I'm a man. Look at that.
He was determined to make it a male-dominated profession, and he did that for male dancers. I'm sure a lot of guys that wanted to be dancers but were afraid of the stigma that it might be attached to it, when they saw Gene Kelly do it, they went, hey, wait just a minute.
His dance style was also part of his acting style, because he just was a real rascal.
You know, fellas are safe alone in a cab with a girl these days.
All right.
Kelly knew that if he was to realise his ambitions as a dancer, he would have to have more creative control. And it was on the film Cover Girl for Columbia Pictures that he was given the opportunity to direct his own dance sequences. The famous alter ego dance posed a special problem for Gene and his young assistant Stanley Donen, who he'd brought onto the film. They had first met in New York when Stanley was in the chorus line of Pal Joey.
The problem was photographing Gene twice in different positions within the frame. No one thought that was possible to do. And Harry Cohen, who owned and ran Columbia Pictures, said to Gene, do you think this young man knows what he's talking about? And Gene said, well, I'm sure he does. So Cohen said, well, let him try. So that was the beginning.
He had a concept of dancing that was not necessarily graceful or decorative. It came out of the story. It was natural movement. It was the way you would walk or run, and it was energetic.
This was the beginning of an extremely successful partnership between Kelly and Donen. Their next project together was Anchors Aweigh. Gene was the star, but both he and Donen directed the dance sequences. This was also the first time that live action and animation had been combined in a dance sequence.
La 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 la. La 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 la.
You see?
It's easy.
An interview was arranged for Gene and me with Walt Disney. And he said, let me get this straight. You want Mickey Mouse to be in an MGM picture? And we said yes. He said, Mickey Mouse will never be in an MGM picture. So Jerry Mouse, MGM's Mouse, got the job.
I'm dancing.
Away from the studio, Gene and Betsy were able to relax in their new home in Beverly Hills. Saturday night was always open house at the Kellys.
And that was when the party started. And it was only because there we were with a big house and a housekeeper.
Very often it was a very illustrious group of people, Betty Comden and Adolph Green.
Yeah, they could either be sort of nothing folks, or they're sort of the mythical figures would suddenly be there.
Leonard Bernstein.
We met Noel Coward there one magical night.
Marilyn Monroe.
Cary Grant. Lenny Hayton and Lena Horne would come just for the cocktail hour, and he made these fantastic drinks.
And very often it would be gatherings around the piano and people singing. And
some of them stayed, some of them went to sleep on the floor.
George Cukor once said, "Who's that boy who's always asleep on your floor?" That was Stanley.
It seems to me I've heard that song before. It's from an old familiar score. I know it well, that melody. It's funny.
Their favorite kind of party was just to play charades, which they called the game.
They were cutthroat.
Gina and Betsy had such a radar between them that they always won because they just had to stand up and the other one guessed what they were doing.
One syllable.
They didn't have to do anything.
And all of a sudden, here's daybreak. The sun is out and everything. And so they said, Gene, let's go outside and play volleyball.
Please have them play it again. And I remember just when I heard that lovely song before.
The most innovative and successful musicals unit at MGM was run by Arthur Freed, and Kelly established himself as a key member of that group. Although Kelly's career had reached a new high, he now more than anything wanted to serve his country in World War II. His bosses here at MGM tried to stop him, but he won the battle and joined the Navy, earning the rank of Lieutenant Junior Grade after serving in the photographic division of the Naval Air Force until 1946.
New York, a wonderful town. The Bronx is up and the Battery's down. The people ride in a hole in the ground. New York, it's a wonderful town.
On leaving the Navy, Kelly was given the opportunity to co-direct his first movie with Stanley Donen. On the Town was released to great acclaim in 1950.
What's extraordinary about it is the way in which it's conceived. It took them into real places. You'd never seen that before. All musicals were set in the studio. Even when they were outside, they were on the back lot.
From MGM's point of view, it was rebellious for us to want to do it on the streets, but it just seemed to Gene and me like this is a story about three sailors in 24 hours in New York. And New York is a city you can't do on a soundstage.
New York, a wonderful town. The Bronx is up and the Battery's down. The people ride in a hole in the ground. New York, it's a wonderful town.
They saw the footage when we got back, and it was a revelation to them, and they knew that we were changing the whole look of the film musical.
Manhattan women are all in silk and satin, so the fellas say. There's just one thing necessary in Manhattan when you got just one day. Gotta pick up a date, maybe 7 or 8 on your way in just one day.
There's one sequence which, every time I think about it, I'm going cold now thinking about it.
We're going on the town.
And they go into the lift.
And then we come down the elevator and then walk down the street.
God, it's electrifying. You think, God, I'd have loved to have done that. Can you imagine setting that shot up and doing it? I mean, and it's thrilling now. Even now, it's thrilling.
We're going on to town. We're taking back the traces. We're gonna do the places we've never done before. We're going on the loose. We're going all our going.
He found a way with Stanley of shooting musical numbers of dance without cutting away and breaking the continuity.
Right,
and
exactly.
really letting the dance speak for itself and be properly photographed so you
And
can really
be
see it.
cinematic at the
Yeah.
same time. You got a feeling of the energy moving forward in one piece.
Kelly was also responsible for bringing a talented French ballet dancer to Hollywood to star in the Oscar-winning An American in Paris.
Eddie told me, Gene Kelly's coming to Paris, he'd like to meet you, and I said, I can't do modern dancing, I'm strictly ballet. And Gene said he wanted to make a test. He said, I know you can dance, but I don't know how you photograph, I don't know if you can act. So he made me go through a little scene. I never thought in a million years the studios would be interested. 2 weeks after the test, there was a phone call from MCA agent. Get ready, you're leaving in 3 days. There we are.
At its climax, the film featured a 17-minute ballet. Today, Gene Kelly is remembered not only as a great entertainer, but also as something of a style icon.
If they ask me, I could write a book about the way you walk and whisper and look.
He dressed exactly like he dressed in the movies. Dark trousers, white socks, moccasins, a V-necked dark sweater, a shirt. I mean, it was his style.
He always had his trousers tailored, so there weren't hip pockets. So it looked slim and a complete line down.
Very powerful, stocky, strong. I don't think I ever saw him in a tie.
He was very cute, I must say, a very attractive guy.
Short sleeves and his arms filled. I mean, there wasn't this sort of room coming out the sleeve. This was full of flesh and muscle.
Gotta dance, gotta dance, gotta dance.
Kelly's next collaboration with Stanley Donen would prove to be his greatest success.
Gene was a conceptual artist. He had a wonderful idea, and Stanley was the one who could put the steps together and rehearse them and do all the legwork.
It has often been voted the second greatest American film of all time after Citizen Kane. And I think that because of that, it is probably the best remembered American musical.
It's ostensibly about the coming of sound and how the people who were established stars made the transition. But many people's lives were destroyed. Many of them just couldn't make the transition.
The public is screaming for more.
More what?
Talking pictures, talking pictures.
Oh, it's just a freak.
Yeah, what a freak. We should have such a freak at this studio. I told you talking pictures were a menace, but no one would listen to me.
I'm singing in the rain, just singing in the rain.
Arthur said, kids, I want you to write a movie called Singing in the Rain and get all my songs into it. And that's all we were told
Yes.
about the picture.
What's it about? Oh, it's about singing in the rain.
Singing in the rain, just singing in the rain. What a glorious feeling.
All that we knew there would be in the story would be some scene where it would be raining and someone would be singing. And we had to make up the characters and the plot and everything.
Yes,
Put
we had
all the
staff
songs
of
in.
sheet music and
Very
a giant shock of despair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm singing in the rain, just singing in the rain. What a glorious feeling, I'm happy again. I'm laughing at clouds so dark up above. The sun's in my heart and I'm ready for love. Let the
It has a sort of jeu d'esprit, a joy of living in it. So that's great.
Come on with the rain, I've a smile on my face.
When people saw that in the cinema, I cannot tell you how knocked out people were. I was at 7, you know, and you look at it now and you think it is unutterably perfect. Unutterably perfect.
They didn't realize the material his suit was made of. As soon as the rain hit it, it had shrunk. And he had the flu. I think he had a temperature of 102. But of course, he was so enthusiastic. It really does express almost everything about him. The joy at being in love and the joy at singing and dancing in the street. And I think he knew it. You know, I think he knew it was a great number.
Dancing and singing in the rain.
Kelly's final film with Donen was It's Always Fair Weather, marking the end of a unique partnership.
Feeling so unlike myself, always used to dislike myself.
Gene didn't like to be contradicted about anything, or he had a good ego of his own. Stanley felt that Gene took credit for everything, so probably Gene felt maybe that Stanley was wrong, that Stanley shouldn't have taken that much credit.
We tried not to argue on the set. We tried very hard to only argue off the set or in the privacy of some office or something. But it was a struggle. It was not a great romp.
Moving to Europe in 1952, Kelly made 3 films, one of which was Invitation to the Dance, a full-scale ballet. It was his most personal and experimental project, and unfortunately, a box office flop.
Are you a member of the Communist Party? Or have you ever been a member of the Communist Party?
It's unfortunate and tragic that I have to teach this committee the basic principles of Americanism.
That's not the question. The question is, have you ever been a member of the Communist Party?
Kelly's move to Europe was for tax reasons, but this was also the McCarthy era, when many actors and writers were blacklisted on suspicion of being communist sympathizers.
He was a social democrat, actually, all through. I didn't, you know, there aren't any social democrats in America. You can't use the word social. It's too related to socialism.
Kelly and his wife Betsy, who had always mixed in left-wing circles, were a natural target. In Hollywood, Kelly had become first vice president of the Screen Actors Guild and was actively involved with political organizations like the Hollywood Democratic Committee and the Progressive Citizens of America.
At MGM, the president of the company, Louis B. Mayer, at least when I was there, I guess he was a great man when he started this thing, but he never seemed to be around. But he had a string of racehorses, and he was more interested in the horses than the actors, you see. So he was never in the way, you know, unless he thought you were a communist. Then
you were in trouble.
Yes, then you were.
There was by now a very strong anti-Russian feeling in the United States. And it's clear that Senator McCarthy, the leader then of the right wing, hated him and probably used strings with Mayer and the others. But, you know, it's not the sort of thing they will write out in their diaries. But so many people jumped on him, and the parts that he didn't get, I'm convinced, was because of pressure by right-wing forces in the government.
He certainly helped many people that were blacklisted with money and trying to get them jobs and, you know, supporting families and things. That's the kind of, you did that secretly, you did that quietly. I was blacklisted, but I didn't suffer nearly as much as many people because of being married to Jean, living in a nice house. I suffered professionally, but, you know, my life wasn't destroyed.
Kelly became increasingly frustrated and unhappy with his relationship with MGM. Time and again, they refused to loan him out to other studios for films which he would have been ideally suited, like Pal Joey, Cyrano de Bergerac and Guys and Dolls. Kelly finally parted company with MGM in 1958. At the same time, his long and happy marriage to Betsy also came to an end.
I was not wanting to be an idolized little girl. And the only way I could feel grown up and independent, it turned out, was to leave that life. So I did. I mean, it wasn't easy, but I did.
In 1960, Kelly married Jeannie Coyne, his longtime dance assistant and former wife of Stanley Donen. They had 2 children, Tim and Bridget. Kelly had to accept that popular taste had changed, and MGM was no longer producing musicals. He continued working mainly as an actor, and then in 1968, he was given the opportunity to direct Hello, Dolly, an old-style musical featuring Barbara Streisand and a young British actor, Michael Crawford.
Michael Crawford? I said, yes. He said, I'm Gene Kelly. I said, I know. I said, and he said, can you dance? And I said, well, not really, no. I'm not known for my dancing. He said, well, what are you known for? I said, nothing. At the moment, nothing. He said, well, let's see what you can do. He said, get up on the table here. And he did a few steps, and I said, I said, I can't do all that. I said, could you halve that maybe and just do a couple? So I moved a little, and it was so awkward. But he said, that's right. He said, you can do it, 1, 2, 3. The part of Cornelius Hackle is available. What we're looking for is an attractive idiot. My wife thinks you're attractive, and I think you're an idiot. He was singularly the most impressive person I've ever worked with. He would come up on a Sunday morning, and he'd be like a child. I got this great idea. When you and Barnaby come out of the thing, he said, stand there now, point out there. And he said, stand, let me just look at that. That's great, kid. See you Monday. And he'd drive 20 minutes back to where he lived. And that would have been 50 minutes out of his Sunday.
Hello, Dolly was the last musical Kelly would direct.
The public is supposed to have lost interest in musicals, and people don't write songs the way Cole Porter and Richard Rodgers and so on wrote songs. I think it's just that a generation of talents came and went.
Ever the family man, Kelly had a fulfilling home life. But in 1972, his wife Jeannie developed leukemia.
It was terribly difficult for him. It was a long illness, and he was very stalwart through it. But my father didn't do well with illness.
They hung very tough and made sure we knew what was going on, but at the same time, you know, even as a kid, you realize that this is very serious.
I was alone with her the night before, and then they called in the morning and said that she had passed on during the night.
I really believe that my mom was the great love of his life.
He and Jeannie had decided that they didn't want nannies and other people bringing up their children. So when she died, he took care of the family.
There was talk of him going off to be part of Barry Lyndon, and instead he said, well, you know, should we stay home this summer and I can do this other job, Viva Knievel, you know. And of course I was riding motorcycles. I said, yes, Dad, do that. And he you know, he would do things like that, you know, keep little money coming in. He was a complete parent.
just singing for me and my gal.
Hey, wait a minute, I give up, Gene. This vamp goes with too many songs.
It sure does. And you know something? It even goes with this one, too.
During the latter part of his career, Kelly made frequent television appearances and was always the perfect guest.
I'm singing in the rain, just singing in the rain. What a glorious feeling. I'm happy again. I'll walk down the lane with a happy refrain, just singing and dancing in the rain.
In 1982, when I met him, his schedule was such that he would have to go to Germany to accept an award. Then he'd come home. Then he'd go to Switzerland. Then he'd go to Paris. Then he'd go to Rome. He'd go all over accepting awards. And he liked that. He really liked it. It made him feel good. Not so much in an egotistical way, but just to be appreciated.
For the last time, Kelly married to Patricia Ward, a young woman who had been helping him write his autobiography.
We got married in 1990, and people are fascinated in the age difference, obviously. We were 46 and a half years apart. I don't think it was a huge surprise. I'd been around for quite a while. I think it surprised everybody else a lot.
In his remaining years, his health began to fail, and after a series of strokes, Gene Kelly died in 1996.
It sounds silly to say so, but I think, if anything, Gene was underrated rather than overrated. His talents were so varied, and he was so versatile. How many movie stars can not only act, but sing and dance and choreograph and direct? He was a Renaissance man.
I think now, looking back, although he did many other things with a great deal of gusto and enthusiasm, and he was a lovely father and husband and all that, I think his work was never out of his mind.
He was very proud of what he did, and he wanted to be remembered in a positive light, because the man worked hard, and yeah, I think he knew he did something important.
In time the Rockies may crumble, Gibraltar may tumble, they're only made of clay.